Twin Peaks is a work of audiovisual poetry, and as such, its plot isn't its point. At the same time, I think we'd be selling David Lynch short by assuming its plot is meaningless or indecipherable. In this video, I'm going to lay out a philosophical interpretation of Twin Peaks' plot, with a focus on Dale Cooper in Season 3. It's all about bonsai. Bonsai.
Bonsai!
It's no mystery that David Lynch has a thing for trees. He grew up in Montana as the son of an arborist, and trees feature prominently in every film he's made.
It's a sunny, woodsy day in Lumberton, so get those chainsaws out. This is the mighty WOOD, the musical voice of Lumberton. At the sound of the falling tree, it's 9:30.
I think trees are the metaphorical star of the Twin Peaks show.
Oh, Diane, I almost forgot. Got to find out what kind of trees these are. They're really something. Sheriff, what kind of fantastic trees have you got growing around here? Big, majestic.
Douglas firs.
Douglas firs.
I'll advise you to keep your eye on the woods. The woods are wondrous here, but strange.
I am known as the Log Lady. There is a story behind that. There are many stories in Twin Peaks. Some of them are sad, some funny. Some are stories of madness, of violence. Some are ordinary, yet they all have about them a sense of mystery. The mystery of life, sometimes the mystery of death. The mystery of the woods surrounding Twin Peaks.
And the trees are also a metaphor Lynch used for philosophical purposes outside of the show.
There's an analogy. If the world is like a tree, we see that the tree is not in the greatest shape. The leaves are turning yellow and they're turning brown. The branches are drooping. The tree is not healthy. Up till now, we've been trying. We chased one leaf at a time, try to make it green. Surface cures, surface cures. As soon as maybe we get one leaf green, 6 more leaves behind us are turning yellow. It's a never-ending horror story. They say the experienced gardener doesn't worry about the leaves. Get it from the source, get it to the roots, the deepest level.
Can the concepts of a world tree and bonsai help us understand the plot of Twin Peaks? Let's start from the end, when Cooper takes Carrie Page to Laura Palmer's home in Twin Peaks. To Cooper's dismay, he doesn't reunite Laura with her mother Sarah. Instead, he comes across a stranger.
What is your name?
Alice Tree-Monde.
Let's dwell on this for a moment, the penultimate scene of the show, and let's think about the name Alice Tree-Monde. Alice is a French name meaning noble or exalted. Tree-Monde can be phonetically broken down into tree and monde. Monde is the French word for world. Noble tree world. Could that be the significance of the name Alice Tree-Monde? Maybe this bit of wordplay seems like a stretch, but Lynch makes a number of seemingly random allusions to the French language.
That's the kind of girl to make you wish you spoke a little French. She didn't get it either. Being French, it doesn't translate. Do you realize, Albert, that there are more than 6,000 languages spoken on Earth today?
In my view, these are subtle and not so subtle hints to be on the lookout for interlingual wordplay. And if we follow this kind of wordplay further, Cooper is an American phonetic pronunciation of the French word couper, meaning to cut. I believe Cooper's main plotline in Season 3, as distinguished from Dougie Jones's, can be read as the journey of a special agent, who's special in the sense that he has the power of tending the noble world tree of Twin Peaks by pruning it, a form of bonsai Lynch finds metaphorically inappropriate even if well-intentioned. The intention is to spare Laura, her mother, her community, all branches of the world tree, the senseless suffering of her murder. He tries to do this by traveling to the Dutchman's, where he asks Philip Jeffries to send him back to February 23, 1989. Dutchman happens to be a woodworking term that refers to the replacement of a rotten or otherwise flawed piece of wood with a new one. Hence, Cooper is attempting to replace Laura's tragic branch with a new one. He travels back to the night Laura died and tries to lead her away from the scene of her murder, but she mysteriously disappears, and Cooper wakes back up in the lodge. On his way back out, Cooper strangely raises his right hand and rotates it 8 times. I believe this signifies the number of times Cooper has tried to reach out and guide Laura away from her demise. Each rotation of his hand represents an additional attempt to graft a new branch onto the world tree, so the rest of episode 18 represents Cooper's 9th attempt. Diane meets him outside the lodge, and they travel to a motel, where a stunted, overly pruned tree lingers in the foreground as Cooper embarks to reunite Laura with her mother. I infer from this that Cooper has pruned so far down the world tree that the closest analog to Laura Palmer in that world, Carrie Page, has no discernible connection to Sarah Palmer, Leland, or even Twin Peaks in general. When they arrive at the Palmer house and meet Alice Tree-Monde, Cooper is dumbfounded, and in the final scene of the show asks, "What year is this?" prompting Laura to recollect something scream-inducing, and the universe seems to short-circuit out of existence.
You can't fool me! I've been here before!
I think the universe short-circuiting is connected to Nadeau's scene earlier in the season, where she seems to turn the power off on a cosmic percolator before falling into a starry night. The credits roll over a still shot of Laura whispering in Cooper's ear. What she says is left to our imagination, but I believe Nadeau's Starry Night gives us a clue.
My dream is to go to that place, where it all began, on a starry night, on a starry night.
In the scene this whispering still shot comes from, Cooper seems disturbed or perplexed at what Laura tells him. Because his goal, at least until this scene in Season 3, has been to rescue her from her tragic fate. But any other fate wouldn't be Laura Palmer's, it would be somebody else's. Carrie Page's, a different version of Laura Palmer's, but not the fate of the young woman the Twin Peaks universe knew and mourned. What that woman needs is to be known and loved in all her particularity, however regrettable some moments of her life might have been. This would explain why Laura subsequently leaves the lodge after whispering in Cooper's ear. She dreams of returning to Twin Peaks exactly as the young woman she was. I believe this is why Diane starts crying while she and Cooper, freshly returned from the Dutchman's, birth the Carrie Page branch into existence. Playing in the background of the lyrics, "My prayer, and the answer you give, may they still be the same for as long as we live. That you'll always be there at the end of my prayer." But in that moment, Diane intuits from Cooper's eyes, the windows to his soul, that Cooper's attempt to prune Laura's murder from the World Tree amounts to a prayer that Laura Palmer won't be there at the end of his prayer. So if pruning the World Tree isn't the proper way to help it flourish, what is?
You started 34 years ago to go deeper and deeper into that spiritual journey, but it's lately only that you decided to go public about it more and more. What was the ignition point, or in your life or in the world, that made you want to talk about it? What happened?
This right here. Water the root. They say the experienced gardener waters the root, and automatically this tree comes up to perfection. And this is the analogy for meditation. Automatically, those leaves get green, the branches get strong, and then those flowers appear. And then that fruit appears. And the fruit for the individual is enlightenment. Maharishi's phrase, water the root and enjoy the fruit. And watering the root is experiencing that transcendence.
Using this metaphor, what the Tree-Monde needs is the nourishing water of transcendental consciousness. What's that? It's a state of mind where we background what distinguishes us as individuals, and foreground what contributes to a sense of unity, identity, or oneness with everything else. The opposite is what I'll call individual consciousness, a state of mind where we background what unites us with other things, and foreground what distinguishes us. If transcendental consciousness represents healthy water that nourishes the World Tree, individual consciousness, at least under certain circumstances, represents toxic water that's harmful. I believe it's no coincidence that we witness a young Sarah Palmer drinking full from the toxic well.
This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full, and ascend. Yours is the white of the eyes, and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full, and ascend.
The only context we have for this scene is Sarah's preceding walk and conversation with a boy she admires. During that conversation, she brings up another girl the boy may like, Mary.
So, I thought you were going with Mary.
No, that's over.
Are you sad about that?
No.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's
Yeah.
We watch her go home, listen to the lyrics, My prayer is to linger with you, at the end of the day, in a dream that's divine. I infer from this that she's dreaming of the boy and herself, indifferent to Mary's feelings. This dream, fast-forwarded to Twin Peaks in 2017, karmically ends with a traumatized Sarah watching two men fight while drinking Bloody Marys. I don't think Sarah Palmer is meant to be the root of all evil in the universe. Rather, it's an allegorical origin story for the Twin Peaks world, akin to Adam and Eve eating forbidden fruit, represented by Lynch as a puberty-aged girl drinking metaphorically toxic water. Something gross, dark, and primal, as she dreams of a boy desired by other girls, the psychic stew out of which romantic dreams can create nightmares. In contrast to individual consciousness in such precarious circumstances, Dr. Amp, whose two colored glasses represent his ability to see the world from both individual and transcendental perspectives, promotes a pristine, salubrious blend.
Yeah, it's huckleberry extract and clean boiled water from the pure artesian springs of Whitetail Peak.
Over the course of Season 3, we see Nadine take Dr. Amp's lessons to heart and absolve Ed of any guilt for loving another woman, Norma.
Enjoy the rest of your lives together. I am so happy just thinking of you two being happy. Ed, I love you and always will. But true love is giving the other what makes them happy.
Nadine is over the moon at the thought of Ed and Norma finally coming together as lovers, because she's transcended her own desires as an individual, and comes to identify Ed and Norma's happiness as her own. I believe Cooper's storyline doesn't end with the final scene of episode 18, but when he delivers the edifying water of transcendental consciousness from this philosophical root all the way to the tip of the World Tree's branches, the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Office in episode 17. After Cooper dispatches Bob with the help of a magical green gardening glove, the clock strikes 2:53.
You look up at the clock. 2:53. 253. What does that add up to? Yes, what is that?
Completion.
Number of completions.
I work for David Lynch.
Yeah, okay.
I believe this is a hint that 2:53 is when Cooper's storyline reaches completion, and he fulfills his purpose. But this requires some parsing. Right before the clock strikes 2:53, Cooper's face becomes inexplicably superimposed on the ensuing scene. I believe Lynch did this to represent a diverging timeline shown in parallel. On the first timeline, Cooper discovers Nadeau is Diane, and says his farewells before returning to the Great Northern, attempting to save Laura, and everything else we see through episode 18.
I hope I see all of you again. Every one of you.
Lynch looks on ambiguously. If my theory is correct, he knows that this version of Cooper's story isn't his final one, because pruning the World Tree contradicts his wish to see every single person in Twin Peaks again. On the second timeline, the one represented by Cooper's superimposed face, he does nothing except deliver one line.
We live inside a dream.
Many viewers will recognize this as related to earlier clues.
We live inside a dream.
And then she said the ancient phrase.
We're like the dreamer. Dreams, and then lives inside the dream.
We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream. I told her I understood. And then she said,
But who is the dreamer?
In this particular scene, the dreamer is best represented by Nadeau. Notice how this moment, when Cooper lays eyes on Nadeau, is when Cooper's face gets superimposed on the following scene. One reason to think Nadeau represents the dreamer is that Lynch chose to dress her character in pajamas, much like the ones Sarah Palmer was wearing in 1956, as she fell asleep while dreaming of her crush and drank full the toxic water. Another is that Nadeau is subsequently unveiled as Diane, who Lynch implied earlier in the season is a girl from Ipanema.
By the time we checked it out, it belonged to some girl from Ipanema.
Ipanema translates to dirty or stinking water. Another is that the syllables comprising the name Nadeau have a clear meaning in French. Nadeau, meaning born from water. I believe all these connections with water can only be understood in light of Lynch's world tree bonsai metaphor. Lastly, how Nadeau's eyelids appear to have been sewn shut so long that skin appears to have regrown around the stitches. Like her eyes haven't been open since 1956, or she hasn't awoken or stopped dreaming. Lynch must have done all these things, and given Nadeau's character a central role in the most climactic scene of the season, for a reason. That reason is, Lynch believes there is tremendous, world-altering wisdom in the thought that we live inside a dream.
A verse from the Aitreya Upanishad, and that verse goes like this: "We are like the spider. We weave our life and move along in it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives in the dream. This is true for the entire universe."
This is true of the entire universe. Not just Nadeau/Diane, not just characters in the Twin Peaks universe, but everyone and everything. What is the dream? It's that we exist as solitary individuals distinct from everything else around us. When we conceptualize our existence like that, it's hard not to curse the whole universe for the senseless sufferings and deaths of particular individuals. Some of us might go so far as to wish the whole thing never existed, and pull a metaphorical plug on it. But it's a choice to evaluate an entire lifetime based on the psychological valence of any single moment. And it's a choice to evaluate an entire universe based on the psychological valence of any single part of it. We can Gestalt switch into a different way of dreaming, transcendental consciousness, where we foreground the whole and relate to every single part of it the same way, with love. In this state, we see that what makes moments of suffering and death so tragic is that life is so worth living, and this universe is filled with so much beauty. It may be a metaphysical crime that any of us can be deprived of it for any amount of time, but we gladly suffer that crime over and over again for all of eternity to share a single second of a dream communing with beautiful souls like David Lynch.